Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Big Ideas in Cannabis here on the Beard Bros Media Network. I'm your host, Cassie Tomaselli. I am the founder of Tomaselli Media, a boutique content marketing agency here in the cannabis industry, and also the founder of The Green Room, a brand new private membership for cannabis executives, founders, and professionals who are looking to be thought leaders in the cannabis industry. And I am so excited today to introduce my next two guests, Josh Huntington and Jordan Fagen of Xtra Laboratories based in Arizona. Jordan and Josh, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cassie.
And so I just want to take a moment really quick and start off by asking about each of your backgrounds, because you both have kind of a similar path, but a unique story to getting where you are today. So Josh, why don't you go ahead and go first? Just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came into cannabis. And I'm sure Jordan can kind of fill in as well.
Yeah, so my name is Josh Huntington. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Xtra Laboratories, and we started back in 2017. Met Jordan at a dispensary in Phoenix, and we were working together to open up a new dispensary as a management group. And from there, we really learned a lot about the cannabis industry from the back house to the front of the house. Saw a lot of different patient interactions, helped brands launch products, cultivations, produce better flower, and just saw the gaps in the market. And from there, we quickly launched products that were effective, terpenes and flavors into lots of different Arizona brands. And, quickly from there escalated into national success.
Amazing. Jordan, how about you?
So I started off at a small dispensary in Tucson and moved to Phoenix in 2015, where I met Josh, and we've just been collaborating ever since.
Awesome. And then, so as COO, how would you describe your role at Xtra?
Keeping the wheels turning for the most part.
Definitely. And I'm excited to have this conversation because so often we're talking about the cannabinoid input when it comes to formulations and things like that. So talking about the other ingredients that make our cannabis products, I think, is always an important conversation to be had. So I'm excited to kind of dig into this a little bit more with you guys. But first, I kind of want to hear from you because I know a little bit of your story of how you actually started on like the B2C side of things and you had a CBD brand. So I kind of would love for you to just kind of explain the backstory of what that business was and how it led to how you're serving the cannabis industry today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Xtra started out making cartridges to be implemented onto retail sales floors and dispensaries, primarily with CBD. And from there, we just realized there were just products that just were missing from the needs for brands to make better products in the terpene and flavor category. And we started producing products ourselves to bridge those gaps. And then that's where a lot of the success initially came, that we realized that, our products could be far more successful integrating into multiple different brands across, different cannabis markets across national, nationwide. So then it was basically, from there, just continue to build on that. And, brands quickly used them, got great feedback, and we continued to build on that, launch new lines, and see what more and more brands were continuing to need, products that just weren't there, and just continuing to fill those gaps.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And maybe, Jordan, you can share a little bit, like what were those gaps that you were seeing? If you can provide any more detail, like what were you looking for that just like wasn't on the market yet?
Well, when we started formulating cartridges, we just weren't having great success with the flavors involved. And Josh had the great idea that he could do it himself, and that just kickstarted it all. So,
yeah, a lot of the products were just basically created with, I would say, crude ingredients that lacked sophistication and real thought as far as being integrated into cannabis products. Many of them weren't meant for cannabis from the get-go, and people were trying to make things fit, using things that were primarily meant for food and beverage applications, and just weren't really adequate in consideration for the parameters of cannabis and the different specifications and thresholds that needed to be met, different states requirements as far as what needed to be in the products and not in the products. So I think that's where people really struggled in the beginning.
Yeah, just probably a sign of an immature market that didn't have those custom solutions built for them. So you guys have been in business now for over a decade, serving cannabis brands, everyone from like Fagen to Dr. Zodiac's Moon Rock and Copper State Farms and so on. And so what I'd really love to hear from you guys is, when you're working with these brands on formulations and helping them get their flavors and terpenes to deliver to cannabis customers, like what do you see as success with the companies that are doing it right? Like what makes a company good at formulating a product?
Go ahead, Jordan, if you want to start off on that one.
Really, attention to detail is probably the biggest thing. So many labs kind of just come in and they pay no attention to what they're doing, and they want to just make the money fast. And we've seen so many brands just not put the thought into it,
Yeah, there's been so much copy paste out there that initial brands like in Arizona, like Timeless, that just blasted off to the moon. A lot of brands were just playing catch up and trying to figure out what they're doing right. And I think a lot of people start to lose focus on cannabis is supposed to be fun and innovative, and it's all about the next evolution. So if you just continue to look at what other people are doing, then you really start to miss out on the next wave or the next big trend that's coming down the pipeline because you're still trying to catch up what was going on from last week. And things change so fast in this landscape that you really have to plan ahead for the future and be a thought leader and innovative and continue to evolve. Or, even if you're a top brand today, you might not exist in 4 or 5 years just because you cannot just idle in place in this industry.
That's such a great point. And I think it really speaks to the crux of like what a lot of brands are trying to navigate right now is how do I stay relevant as the market is changing, as regulations are changing. I'm sure we'll talk about the hemp market here too and how companies are trying to navigate that with your products. But it's just such a great point that like we can never rest on our laurels. And if we're always chasing what somebody else was doing in the past, we're never going to outpace our competitors. Like we're always
100%.
going to be playing catch up. So how do you approach kind of the customization of these vaporization, edible, other product terpene and flavor profiles? Like what's kind of like your mission or your mantra about how you work with companies to do that?
I think we like to ask a lot of questions and really dig deeper than a lot of people maybe thought of from the beginning, where we have so many different parameters that we're concerned about and benchmarks that need to be achieved in these sophisticated products to actually make them transcend through the market and sell. And that's where we come in as a strategic partner. We're going to ask those tough questions. We're going to make you make the decisions that contribute to ultimate success in finishing these products. And I think that's where we spare no expense in the ingredients we use, and we really strive to, make sure that all of the boxes are checked. And we ourselves are cannabis users. I know what I would be looking for on the retail sales floor. And I always ask myself, like, would I use this product? Am I happy with this product? Would I continuously rebuy it? Would I recommend it to someone else? And I think if you're not holding yourself accountable on those levels, then you can't really ever make a great product in this industry. You're going to drop the ball on some level somewhere.
Yeah, I love that idea of just kind of asking deeper questions. And one thing we've talked about before also is not just asking questions about what you're formulating, but not just asking for something without asking those questions. It's like, okay, I want this terpene, I want this flavor. Okay, well, what are you using it for? Because it's not going to work the same in vapes than it is in other form factors. So can you kind of like speak to that a little bit and like some of the mistakes or the missteps that operators make in thinking that like flavors and terpenes are like one size fits all?
Yeah, I mean, I really wish they were, but unfortunately, in every different product application, there's so many different requirements that need to be met. Whether it's an oil soluble or water dispersible, everything's going to be at different levels, different interpretations of those levels of different compounds and things like that. So you're going to have to really outline specifically how these products are going to be integrated into different cannabinoids and what's the ultimate, profile end goal, achieving, outcome that people are looking for. And I think that's really where we kind of work backwards in a sense of, okay, how does this product need to finish? What are the expectations? And then from there, we can really start asking the questions we need to get the answers to. And a lot of people haven't even really thought about some of the complex situations that these products have to go through to really get refined enough to succeed on the open market and really, get people's attention.
So what's like an example of that, of one of those like rigorous standards that they have to make to go to market?
I mean, I think it comes back to what are the ingredients in the product and how much of each individual thing really needs to be in there. Does it contribute to the success? Or is it just in there because it's filler, or is it cheap? And I think, a lot of companies are looking for easy turnkey solutions, and a lot of times they, I guess, shy away from really crafting a quality product in regards to that, of choosing, maybe an easier way out where you save a couple bucks and the product maybe gets watered down, but it works and it functions just how it needs to. But could you have achieved that same end result by not sacrificing any of those components, for the final outcome? And I think that's where we kind of can help as a strategic partner and help you create products where you don't have to make sacrifices or give up some of the actual, dreams or goals you had for this product. Not necessarily have to compromise and things like that. So I think there's endless possibilities and definitely endless questions to be asked too when creating these products, and how can they be better? And they can always be better, but at some point, like any artist, or engineer, eventually you have to be able to, in a reasonable amount of time, also deliver these products to the market too. So you can obsess, but you also have to be very targeted and strategic in your planning, so you're not spinning your wheels and you're not wasting your resources. And that's why we like to work small and fast and keep things pumping. And our partners expect things to be delivered in days and maybe a week or two, but not months. So these projects are already expired and out of style or faded from whatever trend they were following that quickly. So I think chasing seasonals and things like that are important for brands to really focus on, as the months change, like where are you really focusing your products, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And it reminds me of like when I worked on the operator side, when you talk about those like timelines, everybody wants everything now and we're still figuring it out as we go. And, then something changes or you have to go with a different vape supplier or something. And then you kind of have to like start all over again, which I guess kind of brings me to another question. I know I'm kind of like veering off of the prepared questions that I had, but I want to ask you about like it's so important not just to be able to formulate products for like edible vape, different form factors, but also for the different vape hardware that's out there. I feel like almost every day there's a new form factor or like a new vape product that somebody wants to try. And like from what we've discussed before too, it's like it's even so different from vape to vape. You can't just take that same oil product and put it in a different cartridge and expect it to perform the same way. But a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to hear too. I think this kind of like leads into a good conversation around like safety and testing standards. So I kind of just want to like open up the forum and ask you guys, how do you approach safety in your work?
Well, it really gets started, like you said, with the hardware, I think, and the providers we've worked with, and focusing on the end result, right? Because these products that we sell are ingredients, and we sell them to product makers, and they also source hardware and things like that. So we have to take into consideration, what it's going into, how it's going to function, things like that. And we've worked with some of the biggest groups in the industry, like S'more and things like that, and their R&D department here in Arizona, to make sure that actual flavor profiles make it all the way through the vaporizer and spent vapor testing and things like that. And are those actual components from the flavor making it all the way through to the exhale, essentially? And then what happens throughout that process, and what does that look like? And I think that's where we've really taken a stance on making the highest quality products using the best ingredients. And our mission statement back when we were an operational group was take care of the patients first and make sure you're selling stuff that you yourself would use. In an unregulated market in Arizona, there was no testing mandatory, and we were holding people accountable, really trying to make sure that we could put our best foot forward when people really weren't focusing on, what's in the flower, what's in these different products. And it was of great concern to us. And I feel like we really needed to be kind of, that shining light and the pillar in the community to try and stand forward where no one else was really taking that stance. And, we had vendors who didn't want to work with us because we were difficult to work with in that regard. But we forged a lot of really great relationships with people who had the same mindset as us. So when we launched Xtra, they were like, yes, let's integrate these products quickly. And they knew our mission statement, our quality control standards. And we've applied that same, ethics and morals to making the products. Would you use it yourself? Me as a cannabis user, I always hold myself accountable to that. And we've always tried to make sure that we're incorporating the least amount of flavor compounds possible into a cannabis product, reaching the highest purities available, making sure that you can be at, 4% in a vape cartridge or potentially even less, just to mitigate potentially any concerns about having way too much of a flavor in your product or anything like that. Whereas e-juice is typically 5 or 6x of what you would find in one of our vape products. So I think that we really just try and hold ourselves to the optimal standard of what you theoretically can achieve with making these flavor products, and how little can theoretically go into a product to make it as effective as possible without having to water it down or lower your purity or change your cannabinoid spectrum or things like that, where, those are essentially our sacrifices, like we talked about, where you shouldn't have to make those sacrifices to make the great product that you're trying to make. And that's what our products do for our customers.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because as specific as it is to terpenes and flavors and product formulation, I think it's such a universal lesson across the board that the people who are operating early in this industry have the responsibility to be good stewards of the industry. And I think a lot of us that have made it over the time that we have are the people who have had to have those really tough decisions and say, no, I will not work in this manner, or no, I will not work with this company, because it goes against this standard that I hold myself to. And I think, one example of that was kind of just the Avali crisis that happened a handful of years ago. I know that was probably, a crazy time for everybody, because even though it was on mostly the tobacco side, it wasn't on the cannabis side of things. It put such a spotlight on what we were doing. What kind of fillers are you using? What kind of flavors are you using? What are the testing standards around this? What was that time like for you guys? This was 2019, I believe.
I mean, we had our own vape crisis in this industry too. And I think it was a really tough time for everybody. And a lot of companies were reaching out for statements from us that we are going to certify our products that they don't contain certain ingredients or fillers or any vitamin E or anything like that. And of course, we had no issue. And, we had gone to MJ BizCon previous to this happening in the industry and witnessed a ton of people inquiring about thickening agents. And, typically the issues in cannabis were the oils were already too thick. So we were really starting to kind of like scratch our heads and look at each other and wonder if this was really an issue. And then it really did become an issue, because typically, viscosity issues, like people don't really usually need to make their products thicker. That's unusual in the cannabis industry. So I think that was a giant red flag. And I think we moved away from wanting to contribute to the diluent, additive, filler market. And to this day, Xtra doesn't sell any of those products, while various competitors of ours do. And, it's really a question I ask myself as a consumer as well, like what brands are using those products, right? Because there's no laws against using them. It's more or less, do you claim that by your brand and you're on your package, or do you make those claims and statements? And there's no rules that you have to. And I think that's really, as a consumer, like where do you really, draw the line and tell people we're doing this, we're not doing this, this is in our products. And then, deep down, would those people really have concerns with that as a consumer? And are you not telling them for that reason? And I think there's a lot of that going on in the industry. You see it in flower too, with people trying to get cute with different pesticides or, things like that, where they know it's not on a panel and, maybe they can get away with it, maybe they can't. And I think there's a lot of that from the beginning in the industry back to that time frame you were saying. It was even more so. And when we were operating, it was even sketchier because we knew people were getting away essentially with murder and not being held accountable. A large brand that we started to hold accountable moved out of the state of Arizona that was originally from Colorado making edibles. And we called them out on, their lack of actual cannabinoids in their edible products, which were supposed to be, held to a high standard. And it was just blatant, I think, market manipulation and fraud. And that was just going on left and right. And it fueled the black market to, I think, contribute and chase. The vape category exploded. And previous to that, it was more or less concentrates in flower. So I think it really opened up a whole avenue for people to try and, fast money. And it creates a lot of, potential wrongdoers in that sense, or just people who are just trying to, pull a fast one over people and hustle people. And I think there wasn't really anyone in the industry, like a regulatory body, that would stop it or stand up to it. It was just kind of happening, and everyone was complacent in the sense of no one wanted to point the finger. No one wanted to hold brands accountable in that sense, just because it's not conducive to good business in the industry. So I think that's where brands after this really started to be put under the magnifying glass. And, that's where the industry is continuing to evolve. And, we're joining the Vape Safer initiative with other big industry leaders to try and, create those standards and, keep everyone accountable in that sense of doing the right thing and moving towards just better products in a better industry with higher accountability and just safer end goals.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's almost like we have to create the standards ourselves, so that we can operate responsibly, because it's so new, where it's like, and the regulators, they take a long time to catch up sometimes. You see something very arbitrary over here, but something that needs to be regulated, it's not addressed fast enough, it seems like, to those of us on the inside. So to take that step and say, hey, this is what we want to put forth, I think is really important as a starting point. So kind of, fast forwarding now to 2025, looking into 2026, I'd love to hear from your perspectives, like what kind of flavor trends are you seeing right now? What are you excited about? What's on the market? What do you think we'll be seeing down the pike?
So you're saying, we were talking about this earlier, and Blue Raz is definitely making a comeback.
You said Blue Raz?
Oh yeah, that's been popping off the charts lately. One of our flavors, Rocket Pops, was one of our best sellers a few years ago, and it's got a nice Blue Raz profile to it, and that's been, I think, the best seller of the summer so far.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that like you get to kind of see these flavor trends as they evolve over time. So like what else have you been seeing that maybe wasn't as popular a couple years ago that's just kind of like popping off now?
Definitely berries. All the berries this summer. I think people are really looking forward to like this summer into fall feelings, and like Rocket Pops is a great summer flavor, but I think a lot of the other berries like blackberry, and we have a flavor called snozberry, inspired by the Willy Wonka, wallpaper of all the various berries, and then strawberry has just been trending too. Classic strawberry jam, just all the various berry flavors right now, and lemonade flavors as well was kind of a unique trend starting before the summer that we've been following. But we have a cool new candy family lineup that's going to drop soon that we can't necessarily speak to right now because it's not fully ready. Don't want to divulge too many secrets, but got something like that coming out for the fall. So.
That's super exciting. And do you find that those flavor trends are consistent across categories? Or are you seeing different trends for certain form factors and different for like vapes, for example?
Totally. I think a lot of trends in vapes cross over into beverages and other industries, things like that. I think you'll see a lot of inspirations in different categories in beverages and candy. I myself buy a ton of different varieties of carbonated beverages from different water makers and soda makers and things like that to experience all the different profiles that are being made out there. And I just love it when they drop new flavors just to analyze them and get my perspective on, is it really true to the profile, or is it just something that marketing got clever with or something like that. So, sometimes you try something and you're like, oh, this sounds so cool and exciting. And you're like, that's just strawberry and banana. You guys are calling it dragon fruit. And yeah, it's a nice one. So
yeah. I'm sure your palate is much more refined than mine. Yeah. Almost like a sommelier for flavors in cannabis.
Good and bad. I mean, sometimes you just want to enjoy something and you're just like, why am I picking up on this note that no one else can tell that it's in there, and it's just bothering me. My wife was cutting up basil last night, and I'm like, it just smells like anise in here, like black licorice, and it was so annoying to me. She's like, now that you say that, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Yeah, I'm sure it can like taint your perspective a little bit too.
Yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes. Yeah.
So, we've talked about this before of how Xtra is kind of seen as this like behind the scenes kind of growth partner. So like, what does that like behind the scenes support really look like? Like we talked about some of the questions you should be asking with flavor formulation, but like what else does that look like when you're helping a brand bring a product to market?
I mean, we offer unique insights, amazing customer service. We're always there for people. Any information they need,
So
I wanted to touch on that a little bit more too. Sorry, if you don't mind me just interrupting for a quick second of like good customer service in the cannabis industry, because I feel like that's something that I see even just like on LinkedIn all the time of people talking about, not loving working with certain vendors or what have you. So could you just share a little bit about like, what does it take to be like a good vendor in the cannabis industry today?
Just own their work like it's yours, you know what I mean? And really go the extra mile for them and be available. That's probably one of the biggest things.
Mm-hmm. Right, because we talk about the quick timelines that like Josh is talking about. You can't afford for your vendor to go dark on you when you have timelines and deadlines and ship dates and projections and everything like that. Josh, you were going to say something before I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. I was just going to say that we really focus on being different from a lot of other flavor house providers in the sense that we can craft products unique to your brand. We can do reverse engineering. We can take real world profiles and, make something that integrates into your product seamlessly to achieve what you're looking for. And that all just starts with working, like I said, backwards sometimes from we get something from a brand and they want to, they want it to be better, or there's something that's not working in it, or they want us to just make it for them with better ingredients. So I think that's what we do that's special, is we can make a whole unique brand for you that will give you that standout in the market presence, that differentiation, so you're not another copy paste brand. And, you know, or like if you have a unique flower that you want replicated in a vape form, or you have an awesome edible profile that you can't find in a vape flavor or something like that, that's where we can come in and craft that uniquely for that specific product application.
I imagine that has to be like the most fun part of your job, is like kind of going down that rabbit hole and like trying to figure out those flavor profiles or recreate something that you find elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the pursuit of the chase of the flavor is definitely what keeps me going. I'm constantly obsessing over multiple flavors at the same time, just so I don't get flavor fatigue. Just because if you kind of like looking at one painting for too long when you're working on it, you kind of start to go blurry eyed. And I think keeping that focus kind of varied. A lot of different flavor makers I've talked to do that as well, where there's 20 different projects going on at the same time, and you're obsessing over a caramel note in this flavor, and you're obsessing over a tangy note in this, and how do I get that to come forward, at the right point in the exhale, and what contributes to that. And I think that's the unique, product application specifications that we really like to kind of dive into and split those hairs and, make sure we've done A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all, just to make sure that we've checked all those boxes, and that this is the best possible version. And that's why I think our flavors transcend through the market and continue, with the people that we've started working with from the beginning. It's that attention to detail and sparing no expense in time and effort.
Mm-hmm. You talk about like networking with other flavor makers and things like that. So I'm kind of curious to know, like, in what ways is flavor making in cannabis like similar to like traditional CPG, and like in what ways is it different? Or like what do you learn from traditional CPG that you bring over?
Well, I mean, a lot of flavor makers don't have experience in the cannabis space. They have experience making things for food and beverage, or even e-cigarette is probably the closest thing. So when I meet people from the e-cigarette world that worked in flavors, there's definitely a crossover there, but it's still not the same. Nicotine and cannabinoids obviously function completely different, and those products are made completely different in a completely different fashion. There's also different price points that need to be adhered to. So quality of ingredient standards and things like that can vary. So, but at the end of the day, flavor is flavor. And if you are great at making flavors, it's more so, do you understand all the different parameters that cannabis products really need to adhere to? And then from there, it's, understanding how your product functions in the hardware that most people in the industry are going to use. And I think from there, that's where we kind of invented cannabis products, for vapes in the sense, and cannabis specific flavors, where they were really orientated around those specific parameters that really needed to be adhered to. Like even like California compliance with solvents and things like that, and trying to achieve the least amount of solvents present. Whereas a lot of other flavor manufacturers don't necessarily care or worry about that, because their industries are using far less in a application or by volume. So there's so many different things that you have to consider when it's going into cannabis, and what the actual final product really needs to be. And I think that's where we crafted it uniquely, down to each individual compound, where it was, is this important in being in there? And if it's not, then it's taken out. And then I think, that's why in the beginning, when we started making, cartridges and things like that, we realized these products that were available weren't meant for what we were trying to do. And that's where we really needed to start dissecting things and analyzing things on a micro level to bring it back together, I guess, to form something way better that we knew we could. And I think that's when we started making those products from scratch and taking those individual building blocks that we sourced to find only the best ingredients. That's when things started really making sense to us. And giving them to people and then having it validated in tens of millions of cartridges today, I think is just where we have that strength to continue forward in a tumultuous industry, and make new products and continue to evolve and help our partners do the same.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great way to look at it. And it makes me think a lot about like beverage, because that's one product category that I feel like has been hard to get right for all of the reasons that you described, but it's made like amazing strides in the past few years. And, I remember like in the traditional licensed cannabis world, even just a few years ago, they're like, beverage takes up less than 2% of the market. Nobody's focused on this category. It's expensive to have a bottling line, like like beverages aren't worth it in many cases. But now with the hemp farm bill and the cannabinoids we're seeing on the market today, that's really progressed that product category, like by leaps and bounds. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, like, what do you think like hemp beverage is getting right, and what do you think hemp beverage is getting wrong as it relates to flavor and enjoyment of the product?
It's an interesting segment in the market right now. It's been ebbing and flowing. Like, they pulled all the drinks at all of the Total Wine here that had THCA from hemp. The governor didn't want it anymore, so they passed some legislation and got them all, thrown out of the stores. So it's really interesting to see like other states where they're allowing like breweries to make them that don't even have cannabis licenses. They're allowed to buy the extract and make their own THC seltzers and sell them directly to the public or at even grocery stores. So it's really interesting across the country to see that kind of differentiation and dynamic. And I think it is such a weird new sector that, like, I have cannabis user friends that's like all they want to use are beverages. They buy like cases of them, and they see it as a healthier way to consume. And I think there's even with like things like alcohol in this country, like nobody knows what's in half of the products. They don't have to list the ingredients. Some of them do, some of them don't, because I think more so they see their consumers are concerned, and then they start to try and give them some information to maybe make a better purchase. But I think in cannabis, a lot of people aren't necessarily there yet as a consumer or discerning enough. And it's like, how much sugar is in each one of these? Like, some brands tell you, some might not tell you. Some of it's misleading. They might use other forms of sugar. So it's not granulated sugar, but there's still a ton of sugar in there using different extracts or things like that. And then, the emulsification. It's obviously an emulsification. It's emulsified product, oil and water. It would separate, obviously, without some sort of agent in there or binding or emulsification agent. So it's like, what are they making it with? And are they telling you that? Food allergens, things like that, with people with health compromised issues as medical patients, that could exacerbate, or have some sort of issue with some of the medication you're taking. So it's just like, maybe you should just steer away from those products if the providers aren't being completely transparent as far as what's in there. And then, I think the industry is going to look towards, leaders in that segment to step forward and make better choices and be more transparent. And I think that's where the industry is really going. And, more initiatives, more groups to craft those standards in a industry where they're really slow to do it themselves, or from the regulatory bodies, we almost, like you said, need to do it ourselves and take that first step forward and lead. And I think that's where that segment is kind of lacking, or, just hasn't evolved enough. It's still young, right? If you compare it to like the age of like vapes and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see it grow. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen with it, from a nationwide standpoint. Like, is it going to get bigger? Is it going to contract? Is it a fad?
Yeah, I'm sure it's hard for your clients to even like project that.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the laws change, as one of my guests a couple episodes told me, like weekly. Like they have to look at the news weekly and see where they can ship to and where they can't at this point. It's like it's such
Yeah.
a chance that you take operating right now, but then you think of being first to market and how it has its advantages of like how do you weigh that as a brand owner? It's really difficult.
It's very risky right now, I think, in that segment. There were big brands that were going to get into Texas and made big moves, and I know probably bought a ton of equipment and were making big power moves to go down into that market, and then it got really dicey, and there's still talks of pretty much banning everything. Or so I think that's where you have to take those risks if you really want to, probably, like you said, become a leader or one of the larger groups starting out right now. But yeah, this whole industry is like a house of cards in that sense of things can just come crashing down when you least expect them. And do you have the patience and the energy to rebuild?
Yeah, it's almost like we see this like cyclical nature, whether it's like a market that opens up and matures, or it's like a product category that rises and falls, or regulatory standards that change. It's like now we're just seeing this with a new category. So I'm really curious to see how it all shakes out. I'd love to kind of hear too from you guys about, some of your own clients. Do you have like a client success story that like really sticks with you? And can you describe like if it has, like what made it work so well?
Could talk about Eureka Vapor.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Eureka Vapor started off in Colorado and started off with, 4-ounce bottles, and now they're buying liters. They're all over the country. They're here in Arizona, all over the country. So,
yeah, it's a great example of a brand that was doing well, growing, evolving, looking for a better strategic partner. And then from there, we've really kind of crafted a unique relationship with them. We've made some one-off products, and I think they've continued to grow with us, and there's a lot of success there. And we've worked with a lot of other medium to large to even small brands, and start out small and help them grow to 4 or 5, 6x of when they started with us. And I think brands see the value with us, and that we really strive to provide them with high quality products, the greatest customer service that we can, and staying ahead of their curve, and making sure that we have the ingredients we need to make their products when they need them, and they don't have to wait weeks for things to pass, internal quarantine or QC or things like that. They're ready to go in a quick timeline. And I think that's the strategic planning for us that takes a lot of time and effort on the back end to make sure that our strategic partners are successful as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just like such a testament to like the peace of mind you can give an operator with that like continuity too, of like they know they can count on you, but you're also not resting on your laurels, just like they're not. So you're almost like constantly innovating together and taking those like step ups together to make sure that you're both staying super relevant in the market. So I think that that's just a really great story. So for newer brands that are kind of getting into the market now, and they're looking to stand out on dispensary shelves, what advice would you give to them when it comes to like building a compelling and compliant brand and sensory experience for their customers?
I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, show up. That's the first step. So with a good quality product, good branding, good marketing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think having vision now is probably more important than anything. Not just being able to deliver a decent product at an affordable price point anymore. I think people are looking for something that breaks through those common trends and really kind of stands out and is more fun or exciting and seems new in a different way. And it's even harder to do that now. And, you see brands try and do it with packaging initially, and that works to some degree. Or there's just huge marketing campaigns that are so timely and costly that you wonder if it is really successful, and are they just buying shelf space, things like that. So I think right now you have to really focus on the next evolution of the industry in whatever segment you're in. And right now, I think it's hardware in vapes. And I think people who are still using like 510 threaded posts, cotton wrapped ceramic atomizers, they worked great with distillate, and product categories evolved with them because that was really the standard, was the gold standard for a long time. And that was really all the industry had. But now you're seeing all these all-in-ones and these new devices. And now there's brands that are using postless with no cotton, no glue, like it all just snaps together and fits with, gaskets and things like that. So healthier options, paying attention to spent vapor testing, making sure, whatever you're doing isn't full of, heavy metals or things like that. And then, contributing to the actual, I think, end result of a great product, and really focusing on kind of taking that next evolutionary step and checking all those boxes. And like when we started, we literally filled every piece of hardware that was available on the market. And I think if you're starting a new brand, you should probably do the same. And if you're not, you're probably cutting some corners just for the sake of budget, time, or, things like that. So it's just, it's ever changing, especially in that space. Like there's new pieces of hardware coming out every month. And I think you need to find a really good partner. And the best brands I've seen have made something from scratch that's unique, that does not exist yet.
And I think that kind of also goes to like what you guys do and why it's so important to the industry, because you're kind of alluding to it, this like commodification of the plants. We talk about this on every podcast, trying to get away from the highest THC at the lowest price and calling it a day. But like what you guys do is like making it so much more fun and exciting to consume, because you're showing, the sensory experience that's truly possible. And that's what helps make a brand too, is providing that, and kind of sophisticating the products in the market in that way. So I think it's awesome what you guys do.
Thanks.
So is there anything else that you kind of want to share with the audience? Like I like to ask sometimes at the end, like if you had a magic wand that you could wave to change something in the industry, like what would it be? Or any just kind of parting words?
I hope the industry continues to evolve in a way that is conducive to small business owners continuing to be able to exist and, chase their dreams and have the business and products that they want, rather than it all getting so consolidated that it all just goes to large monopolies or corporations and things like that, which I don't think anyone in this industry wants to see.
Yeah, small players continuing to innovate for sure. Well, I just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I appreciated getting to learn more of your story and some of the ethos behind Xtra Laboratories. Wishing you all the success in the world. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Cassie. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So that wraps up episode 10 of Big Ideas in Cannabis here on the Beard Bros Media Network. If you are watching us on Spotify or on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe. This episode will be airing in August, so if you're listening, hope you're having a great summer, and we will see you in September. Have a great day.